We'll look at Federalist 79 today. It's a pretty straightforward paper. Focuses basically on the fact that if you want the judiciary to be independent of the other branches, you don't allow the other branches to manipulate them by upping or downing their salaries. You remember we talked about it when we talked about the president and presidency. We said that for president, as far as president is concerned, the legislature cannot decrease his salary. Okay, but here is a little different because he says since the federal judges are going to be sitting on the bench much longer during good behavior, maybe for life, because of inflation and things like that, legislature can increase their salary, but can definitely not decrease their salary. That is one of the most important things that it talks about in this Federalist. And the next thing is that he talks about what is the right age for a federal judge to retire. He says that state of New York says people cannot be sitting as judges after the age of 60. He says, when can we really say whether somebody has lost or is losing their faculty of mind? He says there should not be an age limit. That's what Publius says. That's what Hamilton says here. Now it's up to you to decide. You got to think about these as we go through these Federalist Papers. Is it a good idea for judges to serve during good behavior for life till they're 80, 85, 90? Should there be a term limit? Should there be let's say 18 years, 10 years, 20 years for them to serve and retire? These are things that it's very important for you to think about as we go through the reading of the Federalist Papers. Let me start reading it to you. Next to the permanency in office, nothing can contribute more to the independence of the judges than a fixed provision for their support. The remark made in relation to the president is equally applicable here. In the general course of human nature, a power over a man's subsistence amounts to a power over his will. Let me read this again. In the general course of human nature, a power over a man's subsistence amounts to a power over his will. You control his salary, you control his income, you control him. And we can never hope to see realized in practice the complete separation of the judicial from the legislative power in any system which leaves the former dependent for pecuniary resources on the occasional grants of the latter. The enlightened friends to good government in every state have seen cause to lament the want of precise and explicit precautions in the state constitutions on this head. The state constitutions that do not mention this, do not actually say it in the Constitution, have come to find it an awful thing. So we, in this Constitution, we've actually put it down there, and we want to make sure that the legislature does not mess with salary of the judges once they're in office. The enlightened friends to good government in every state have seen cause to lament the want of precise and explicit precautions in the state constitutions on this head. Some of these indeed have declared that permanent salaries should be established for the judges. But the experiment has in some instances shown that such expressions are not sufficiently definite to preclude legislative evasions. Something still more positive and unequivocal has been evinced to be requisite. The plan of the Convention, our Constitution, accordingly has provided that the judges of the United States shall at stated times receive for their services a compensation which shall not be diminished during their continuance in office. So at a fixed interval, they're going to get their salaries. You can't make them wait 2 years or a year, 1 year. If you don't like with one of their decisions, you can't say, okay, we'll pay you 2 years from now. And at the same time, it says you cannot diminish it. You cannot decrease it. You cannot lower it. This, all circumstances considered, is the most eligible provision that could have been devised. It will readily be understood that the fluctuations in the value of money and in the state of society rendered a fixed rate of compensation in the Constitution inadmissible. What might be extravagant today might in half a century become penurious and inadequate. It was therefore necessary to leave it to the discretion of the legislature to vary its provisions in conformity to the variations in circumstances, yet under such restrictions as to put it out of the power of the body to change the condition of the individual for the worse. A man may then be sure of the ground upon which he stands and can never be deterred from his duty by the apprehension of being placed in a less eligible situation. The clause which has been quoted combines both advantages. The salaries of judicial offices may from time to time be altered as occasion shall require, yet so as never to lessen the allowance with which any particular judge comes into office in respect to him. So you can change it, you just can't lower it. You can increase it because of inflation, because judges are going to serve for life during good behavior. They're going to serve 20, 30 years, and the cost of living is going to be much higher, so we need to change that. It will be observed that a difference has been made by the Convention between the compensation of the President and of the judges. That of the former can neither be increased nor diminished. That of the latter, the judge's salary, can only not be diminished. This probably arose from the difference in the duration of the respective offices. As the President is to be elected for no more than 4 years, it can rarely happen that an adequate salary fixed at the commencement of that period, at the beginning of that period, will not continue to be such to the end of it. But with regard to the judges who, if they behave properly, will be secured in their places for life, it may well happen, especially in the early stages of the government, that a stipend, which would be very sufficient at their first appointment, would become too small in the progress of their service. So judges' salary cannot be lowered. It can only be increased because they serve for a longer time. Because of inflation, cost of living, that salary has to be adjusted. But for the President that serves only for 4 years, it's okay to say it should stay the same, because in 4 years, unless something catastrophic happens, the salary is not going to change that much. Cost of living, I should say, is not going to change that much. So we'll continue with the rest of the Federalist 79 here in the next video, and I'll be with you.